saw a familiar face walking on the avenue. Both surprised by the way we looked. The years had changed us too. We smiled and both embraced.
Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Gung HO. Today is September 4, 2018. I think many of you know who I am. I'm Joe Giannini, a Marine Corps captain that served in Nam in 67 and 68. And I have a special guest, Jeff Sussman. I came across him. I was reading The Star, and there was a piece about him being an author, about a book called Fists, Fame, and Fortune, about Rocky Graziano. And I have the same, I don't know, interest, you might say, or
Sure.
fascination, or it's like, I don't know. So I got in touch with you, I called you up,
Right.
and I went to your book opening, and I got you on the show. I think this is maybe the fourth show.
It's the fourth show.
And
I feel like I'm your co-star now.
you could be. We started out talking about Rocky Graziano and the fight business, and then we moved on to our dads. And we're still a little bit with our dads, I think. And I want to rehash again just a little bit about your dad, like what year he was born, when in the, you know, that type of.
He was born in 1912 to a fairly poor family. He met my mother when he was 20 and my mother was 16. They got married officially in 1932. My father went into the Army in, I think it was 1942. He was drafted into the Air Force. He got leave to come home when I was born in 1943. I have a picture that I'll show you of that. And he went into business. Right after the war, he was a salesman for the United States Vitamin Corporation, which was the first company in the United States to manufacture and sell vitamins. And then when his father died in 1947, he took over his father's business, which was running a company that manufactured women's dresses. And he, in 1956, the mob tried to move in and take over his business, and my father had to negotiate a deal with them. He died in 1958, and he had a partner who was very weak and who wasn't able to stand up to the mob and deal with them. And they took more and more pieces of the business over until they eventually forced him out, and it became a mob business.
So your dad was like 46 or 47 when he died?
He was a week shy of his 46th birthday when he died in 1958.
My dad was born in 1920. His dad was also born in the U.S., so I'm third generation. He was a tough guy. He was raised in Crown Heights. He had a reputation for being a terrific street fighter. And he went in the service twice, once during the Depression, and came out and then went back in again during the war. And he was assigned to the 9th Armored Division. And while they were training at Fort Sill, he got very sick. Something happened with his tooth, it went to his brain, and it almost killed him. In fact, they gave him his last rites. And he lost everything. He lost his sight, his hearing, his ability to speak, his ability to walk. And he somehow stayed in the hospital for about 9 months. He came through. But he was a really tough guy.
So was my father.
Yeah.
But my father was also a very kind, very generous.
My father had a good
person.
heart.
I remember we were driving to his factory one Saturday morning, and he saw 3 kids beating up another kid in a vacant lot in Queens. And he hit the brakes, and he jumped out of the car, and he chased the 3 kids away. And he said to the other kid, can I give you a lift home? Are you all right? And we drove the kid home. Another time, my father and I had gone out for ice cream sodas one night, and we were sitting at this counter having ice cream sodas, and this kid came scared out of his mind, came running into the ice cream parlor and hid in a phone booth in the back, with one of those old-fashioned phone booths with the double door that closed. And shortly thereafter, 2 other kids came running in, looking for him. And my father saw, that this is who they were frightened of. So he said to the kids, "Who are you?" Started a conversation with them. He said, "You want a Coke? Come and sit at the counter. I'll buy you Cokes." And my father had he had a friend who got him a detective's shield, and so he pretended that he was a detective, and he said, "You guys aren't up to any trouble, are you?" He said, "I don't want to have to run you in or anything like that, do I?" And they said no, and they weren't sure, so they questioned him. They said, "Do you know so and so at the whatever the precinct was?" And he changed the subject because he wouldn't know whether they were trying to test him or not. But eventually, after these 2 kids, they were about 17 or 18, had their Cokes, they left. And once again, my father drove this other kid home who was frightened. So he had a very good sense of right and wrong. And I remember in the mid-1950s, we lived in an all-white neighborhood. It was integrated in terms of religion and backgrounds. So next door to us was a Spanish family. On the other side was a very waspy family. Across the street was an Armenian family. Next to them was an Italian family of a father and son cop. And they had a dog that I used to walk for them every afternoon. And on the other side was a Jewish family and so forth. So my father had a good friend on that street, and his wife came by with a petition one day because one of our neighbors wanted to sell her house to a black family. And my father was infuriated. He ripped up that woman's petition, and he said, "You're my best friend's wife, but I never want you to come in this house again because I hate that kind of bigotry."
I don't know if I told you this story. Stop me if I have. My dad got involved with me in the boxing business in the 80s, early 80s. And I had several trainers working for me. I had a small stable of fighters. I did everything, promotion, and worked out at Gleason's in Manhattan in the beginning. And I had some black trainers. One was named, we called him Rocky, Roscoe Davis. Another one was Don Turner. And my dad, hit it off with both of them. Did I tell you this?
No.
He hit it off with both of them. And Rocky and my dad were the same age. They really were the same age, same height, same build, everything. It's crazy. But what happened is, in 1982, Rocky walked out of Gleason's in Manhattan. He walked out the door, had a heart attack, and died right in front of Gleason's.
How old was he?
He was probably the same age as my dad, 62.
And your dad died at 62 also,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Also of a heart attack.
My dad had already died.
Oh, he had died by that time.
My dad had already died, and then Rocky died. So, I was really close to Rocky. Rocky was like my surrogate dad. We were very close. And then my dad died, and then Rocky died. And turned out Rocky had no family in New York, so it was up to me and my partner to lay him out and bury him.
Sure.
It's crazy. So I went home and I told my mom, Rocky died. She was upset. She knew him, and I said, I've got to make arrangements for him. He has nobody up here. I said, I even have to get him a burial plot. She says, "No, you don't. You bury Rocky with Dad." They were friends.
What a nice thing to do.
And that's what happened.
And where are they buried?
St. John's Cemetery in Queens.
Sure.
So that's what happened. Rocky was laid out, I think it was called the La Pola Funeral Parlor in Canarsie. Then we had a mass in a really big cathedral in Brooklyn. And then we buried him with my dad. It just goes to show you that there was something about my mom and my dad that the color, the religion, it didn't mean anything to them.
Same with me. Same with my family.
And my dad actually taught me that stuff. He said a lot of things to me. One of the things he said, don't ever judge a person by their color. It's one of many things he said to me. But Rocky and my dad, are together, and that's just the way I was brought up. So I was brought up in a family that was intelligent and tolerant and good-hearted, you know.
Same with me. They were intelligent, good-hearted, but also tough.
What else?
Also tough.
Oh, yeah.
And my father had no patience with people who were really stupid and bigoted and professed all kinds of stupid ideas. He just wouldn't tolerate it.
My dad had a reputation for telling the truth no matter what. You know, I mean, really. Just, you know, I mean, he would actually tell fighters, you know, you're not going anywhere, go get a job.
Well, I remember going with my father one Saturday after work. It was either a friend or a woman who worked for him had a brother who wanted to become a professional fighter. And my father had gone to watch him work out and so forth and so on. And he knew this guy was never going to, you know, get to the top. He would just get battered around for years and not make any money. And he told him that. He said, don't do it. He said, you know, maybe 1 out of 1,000 people will get to be a champ, but you don't have it. And you have to be realistic about what you're capable of and what you're not capable of. And he said, don't put yourself through all of that heartache.
My dad was like that. He knew right away. He looked at a fighter for a round or so, and he knew whether or not he was, you know, going to go anywhere. He just knew it. Well, he was a fighter. You know, he was never beaten as an amateur, and I don't think he was ever beaten in the street either. He was something else.
My father said that when Abe Simon, who was his close friend growing up, became a boxer, you know, he had the toughness and so forth, but he didn't have the skills really, and they got him a trainer. And one of the people who helped him train for his first fight against Joe Louis was Jack Johnson. You know, the Great White Hope. And there's a photograph of Abe and his manager sitting like this, and Jack Johnson is standing right behind Abe with his hand on his shoulder.
Where's the photograph?
I'll email it to you. I found it on the internet.
This is a modern story. One of my trainers back in the 80s was Don Turner. He became very famous. He went on to train Evander Holyfield. He trained Larry, big heavyweight.
Larry Holmes? Larry Holmes?
Yeah, Larry Holmes. And recently he was training this guy by the name of Kosalov, a Russian guy. Russian guy. And Kosalov was really, you know, crushing everybody. But he had a fight with Andrew Ward not too long ago. And I thought that Kosalov beat Andrew Ward. But they gave the fight to this American fighter, a black fighter. But I thought he got screwed, whatever. So they get a rematch. And I noticed that Don Turner, who's a guy I really know good, is not in the corner. And then Kosalov gets knocked out. And then he gets another fight with this up-and-coming guy. And, you know, everybody thinks Kosalov's going to, you know, knock this guy out. But the commentator says, you know, when Don Turner first took him over as his trainer, he watched him for a little while, and he went over, then the fighter, Kosalov, went over to Turner, and Turner said to him, well, he says, it's not about you, it's not about your punching power that you really have. Well, this fight, the last one, he got slaughtered.
Really?
Knocked out big. Turner wasn't in his corner. What goes around, comes around.
Absolutely.
You know, because fighters have a way of, when they lose, too many of them blame their trainer. Or maybe even their manager. I shouldn't have been in this fight, or, you know, the way you're training me. I see it all the time. But
well, it was interesting because in the three fighters that I wrote about a lot, Rocky Graziano, Max Baer, and Barney Ross, they all lost important fights towards the end of their careers, but they never blamed their trainers or their managers. They knew that the fault lay with them, not with anybody else.
Because they had more. A lot of fighters don't have that integrity. They don't have that loyalty. They don't have that self-analysis. Say, oh boy, you told me what to do, and I didn't. You told me jab, 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 and I didn't use it enough. And no, you didn't train me right.
Right. But Rocky Graziano, when he lost to Sugar Ray Robinson, his manager Irving Cohn told him, you shouldn't be fighting him. You're not up to matching punches with Robinson. He's just the best there is out there. And Graziano said, no, I want a shot at him. This is what I want to do. And he said, fine, you'll get a shot at him, but I'm just telling you in advance, you're probably going to lose. And he lost.
He lost bad, too, right?
Yeah, he did lose bad. He got knocked out in the 4th round.
Yeah. I saw my dad, Carmen Basilio, fight Sugar Ray Robinson, the first fight and the second fight. It was crazy. Carmen Basilio was a welterweight.
Yes.
He moved up to challenge Robinson as a middleweight.
Right.
And he beat him the first time. It was a war. The second time, it was the other way around. And boy, oh boy.
Well, I wrote a chapter in a book that I have coming out next spring. I have a whole chapter about Carmen Basilio.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And when he was just an up-and-coming fighter, he had just recently turned professional, and he had recently gotten married, and he took his wife on a honeymoon trip to New York City. He was from upstate New York. And he went to Harlem, and he saw Sugar Ray Robinson on 125th Street. Sugar Ray Robinson owned a bar and some other establishments on 100, and he tried to introduce himself to Sugar Ray Robinson. And Sugar Ray Robinson was very rude to him, and he said, get lost, kid. And Carmen Basilio felt humiliated, especially because he was in front of his new wife, and he was treated like a nobody. And he said to his wife afterwards, he said, I'm going to get to fight that guy, and when I fight him, I'm going to beat the shit out of him.
Well, he did beat him, which was incredible. But the second time around, Robinson really busted him up real good. I don't know if he stopped him. It might have gone the distance the second time.
Yeah,
but Basilio was a mess.
Right, and Basilio had a lot of courage also, because there were mobsters led by a guy named Frankie Carbo who wanted to take control of Basilio's career, and they wouldn't give him certain bouts unless they could get in on the promotion and the management side of it. And he had two managers from upstate, and he said, you want to give them part of your money, give them part of your money, but I'm not giving Carbo or the mob anything.
Isn't it, there's a story about Jake LaMotta that he had to take a dive?
Against Billy Fox, and also with Frankie Carbo. And he had 5 more fights after the dive, and then he finally got a shot at the middleweight title. But he wouldn't take a dive before that, but they wouldn't give him a title fight.
So he actually did?
Yeah, he did, and he admitted it in a Senate hearing. And he said that they came to me and they said, the only way you're going to get a title fight is if you take a dive against this other fighter, Billy Fox. And he did, but it was so obvious. He wasn't even defending himself. He was standing there with his hands up in the air, taking a beating, and then he said, and he threw his hands up, like, that's it, goodbye.
Did he go down?
I'm trying to think I don't remember actually if he went down or not, but it was so obvious. And the fans in the Garden were shouting, fix, fix, fix.
I'm going to tell you something that I haven't really told many people at all. I was managing this fighter, Mike McCallum. He was a terrific amateur, and he was on an undefeated streak. He was on his way to a title. My dad picked him out in Gleason and said, that fighter's going to be a champ. And I got to manage him, co-manage him, but I really was doing everything. So we flew down to Youngstown, Ohio, where Mancini was. Where's that?
I think it's Ohio.
Yeah. Mike was on the card. Mancini was fighting this Mexican fighter, terrific Mexican fighter. And Mike was fighting another Mexican fighter, same stable. And so we go down there, and it turns out that the guy that Mike doesn't want to, for some reason, he doesn't want to fight this Mexican. He and the contract called for 160 pounds. He gets on the scale, he's 168 pounds. He doesn't want to fight. And I said, if he's willing, if the opponent is willing to take the fight, he's going to fight. That's all there is to it. Mike didn't want to fight. But it turned out the opponent couldn't get across the border. So they brought in another guy, right? Mike still didn't want to fight. And then I told him who the guy was, and he said, "Oh, I know him. You know, he was in the amateurs. We were in the amateurs together." So it was a white kid, right? So I go over to this white kid. He's like just out of nowhere. He comes in, you know, and we start talking. It turns out he was a wrestler in college. You know, he's nice. He was an amateur fighter, and he says, "Look, I know Mike. I know Mike a long time." He says, "I'm going out there, and I'm going 3 rounds, and that's it." I never told anybody. I swear to God. He said, "That's all I'm doing." You know. And make a. That's it.
Did he go down or did he just lose?
What?
Did he go down?
He went down in the 3rd round. I never even told Mike.
My mother told me that in the late 1930s, you know, my father was working as a traveling salesman for a dress manufacturer, and my mother was modeling for him, modeling dresses for buyers in department stores. They were up in, I think it was Rochester, New York, and my mother was modeling a dress for the buyer, and the buyer grabbed my mother, grabbed her rear end, and my father lost it and knocked the guy unconscious. And because he lost the sale, I have this. I wanted to show you this picture of my mother at the time, because she was very.
It's like a movie actress.
Pretty. That's what she
looks
looked
like Ava Gardner.
Yeah, that's what she looked like when she was. She was modeling for my father. And
father looked like a famous movie star.
And then this is a picture of them. That's my mother. That's my father. When they went out to a nightclub in the 1950s with the man in the white jacket was my father's first partner, and the man in the dark jacket was their 3rd partner in a second factory that they opened in Brooklyn. And
well, boy, they look like they're a Hollywood couple.
yeah, my mother was very, very glamorous, and it was hard being the son of a very glamorous woman, because people were always, you know, making passes at my mother, and I felt like I had to defend her.
I'll tell you a story about my dad that my mom told me. I might have been about a year old, and they were on the subway. They were at the Atlantic Avenue subway. I don't know if you.
I know the station.
It's up high.
Yeah.
And he was up there with my mom, and these 3 guys were nearby, and they were kidding around, but they were using really vulgar language. So he went over to them, and he said, "You know, watch your language. There's a lady present." And one of them said, "What lady?" Oh my God! He hit that guy, you know, with a right hook, I guess. He knocked the shit out of all 3 of them.
Really?
Yeah.
But you know, that happened to Rocky Graziano. He had married this woman named Norma Unger, and it was during the war, and they had gone to a restaurant on West 8th Street in Greenwich Village, and they were leaving the restaurant, and there were 3 drunken sailors who came out of a bar, and they started making fun of Rocky and his wife because Rocky wasn't in uniform, and they started saying, "Oh, you know, she must be a transvestite and he must be a fag. What, you know, why aren't they involved in the war effort and so forth?" And Rocky and his wife, he didn't pay any attention for a while. They walked east towards Fifth Avenue and then up north on Fifth Avenue, and these 3 drunken sailors were following them, and they turned right on 9th Street, heading towards 6th Avenue. And the sailors are yelling out, you know, fag, transvestite, all kinds of insults and so forth. They get about a quarter of the way down the block. Rocky grabs Norma's hand and he says, "Look, just be quiet, just wait here, I'll be right back." And he goes back and he knocks out the biggest guy, the first guy, with 1 punch to his head. He beats up the second guy, it took a few punches. And the 3rd guy ran off shouting for the police, saying there was a maniac loose on the street. And Rocky and his wife took off running down to 6th Avenue, where they got the subway and headed back to Brooklyn.
My father, we got only not even 2 minutes. This is when he's like probably in his maybe 50s, I don't know. He was always a member of the American Legion, so I was over there one day visiting with them, and I said, "Where's Dad?" He's at the American Legion. He comes in, and he's had a few, and he said something like, this mother, he stole my money from the bar. So I said, "Let's go outside." And I said, "What'd you do?" He said, "I knocked him out." You took a guy, you just took him outside and knocked him out? He said, "Yes." I said, "Dad, give me your wallet." He gives me his wallet. I said, "How much money did you have on you when you went into the American Legion?" He had $20. He took it, he stole it from me. I opened up his wallet, and there's a $20 bill. And he was that way, you know. You get him angry, and he'd knock you out. That's all there was to it. All right, we got just a few seconds more. I guess we can keep going a little bit more.
This has been very enjoyable. I enjoyed talking with you about your father and my father. Gave me an opportunity to reflect on my father in a way that I haven't been able to do in many, many years. So it was very enjoyable.
My dad thought Willie Pep was the best fighter ever.
He was a great fighter, Willie Pep.
Willie Pep, who fought Sandy Sadler.
Those were incredible bouts.
Yeah, 3 fights, but Willie Pep only won 1. But my dad said he was the best.
Yeah, those 3 fights are on YouTube, by the way. They're phenomenal to watch.
Yeah,
they're just terrific. You should see them.
And Sugar Ray, a lot of people called him the best pound-for-pound fighter ever.
I thought he was the best fighter I had ever seen.
He was incredible.
Yeah. I never saw such fast fists. I saw him on a Friday night fight.
We're done. Okay, all right.
Oh, that's it.
It's old time. Where have my old friends gone? Where are they now? It used to be a walk away in my hometown, but they're so far away, as far as walk can be. But in my heart they're close to. Yes, in my heart they're close to. In my heart they're close to me.